Welcome to Public Square. This is Ditmir Bushati from Cambridge, Massachusetts. My today guest is Ambassador Edward Djerejian, who used to work for 8 administrations in some very distinguished roles as ambassadors in Israel, ambassador in Syria, but also he worked with 8 different presidents and different administrations. Ambassador Djerejian is now a senior fellow at the Belfer, the Harvard Kennedy School, Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. And I think it is the right person who holds on his shoulders, on his professional diplomatic shoulders, vast knowledge and experience about Middle East. So I want to discuss with him about the recent Gaza deal or peace plan that has been signed in Egypt, a plan that was a process that was brokered by US President Donald Trump. Ambassador, it's a pleasure to have you on Public Square.
Pleasure to be with you, Ditmir.
Let me ask you the first question in relation to the main details of the Gaza ceasefire deal signed in Egypt.
Well, the major accomplishment is the establishment of a ceasefire of this 2-year war, this devastating war on both sides, but especially the devastation in Gaza. And the major accomplishment is the stopping the fighting, stopping the war, the release of the Israeli hostages, with the concomitant release of approximately 2,000 Palestinian prisoners of various categories. Those are two of the major accomplishments, plus the beginning of the entry of sufficient humanitarian aid into the devastated Gaza Strip. According to UN organizations, there should be a minimum of 600 trucks, aid trucks, food, medicine, etc., that should be entering Gaza on a daily basis. I think they increased that from 0 to about 200, and they're inching up to the desired 600 number. They're not there yet. So that's addressing the end of the fighting, the exchange of prisoners and hostages, and humanitarian aid. That is a major accomplishment of the ceasefire accord that was really sponsored by President Trump with the assistance of course, major Arab countries and Europeans and others. So that's the first part. The second part is the part of the Trump plan is a 20-odd point document with various aspects dealing with the rehabilitation and reconstruction of Gaza, which has been devastated. Approximately 80 to 90% of the infrastructure, the buildings, hospitals, and schools have been, and residences have been reduced to rubble in Gaza. And so there's a major reconstruction effort that's going to have to be done. It's going to cause massive amounts of money and obviously construction projects. That's the first thing that needs to be organized so that the Palestinians can start rehabilitating themselves. This other aspect, important aspect of the Trump plan is a temporary governance structure. Someone has to govern Gaza, and the Arab states, especially the Gulf states, have had a major input into this, and they are looking at a transitional government with Palestinian input to define who those Palestinians will be and from what parties and what leadership that will be has yet to be defined. But that transition government will be overseen by a peace panel or a peace board, as President Trump has called it, that would have international input to guide the governance. The other aspects of the plan are, of course, very, very important. Is the disarmament of Hamas and the withdrawal of the Israeli troops from Gaza in stages. This is a real vulnerable point in the plan because Hamas is resisting total disarmament, which the Israelis are insisting on, and the Israelis are resisting total withdrawal from Gaza and to maintain buffer zones. So that those are two issues that are still out there that are going to have to be resolved. In the longer and bigger picture, there's an important clause in the 20-point plan that talks about a political horizon for a settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which could lead to the establishment of an independent Palestinian state that recognizes Israel and Israel recognizes that state. That, of course, is aspirational, far from being realized in the near term, but it is important that it is in the plan.
Ambassador, you have been speaking about the details and also about the choreography of this ceasefire. And the fact is that also in the past we have seen, in different periods, we have seen ceasefires. So the legitimate questions being posed by healthy skeptics is, can the Gaza peace hold, or it will collapse like the brief ceasefire that ended in March? So, how much of this Trump's plan, which calls for multinational security force, a new civilian government, and physical reconstruction of Gaza, can be implemented? What are the guarantees this time that this will be implemented?
Well, I don't think there are any real guarantees. And so you're absolutely right. This plan is still fragile. Its implementation is full of ambiguities. But what is different this time is that you have the President of the United States who has brought together this coalition of countries, Europeans, Arabs, and others, to virtually sign on to the plan and to bring pressure on both parties, pressure on the Israelis and pressure on Hamas. So that's the difference. And that's the only hope one can have, that this time there might be a chance that this plan can be implemented in stages. That's the big difference. I think the accomplishment of this is to get, as I said before, the Arab states and others to really put the pressure on Hamas to live up to its obligations, and the United States especially to pressure Netanyahu, especially the Prime Minister of Israel, who was really brought to this plan. It was his intent was to continue the war until he achieved what he called total victory. But I think it's interesting when Israel attacked the Hamas negotiators in Qatar. I think that was a turning point for the United States, that Israel was using the military option too far and too frequently, and the time had come to the table. So my bottom line is that as long as the President of the United States, who's really heading this coalition of forces, remains with strong political will, intent, and involvement, there's a chance this may succeed.
Ambassador, another question which is quite important is who is going to pay for the reconstruction of Gaza? We know that Europeans are about to launch this Palestinian donors group in November. We know as well that some Arab countries, including Turkey, are committed into this process. We don't know yet, at least I don't know yet, whether Israel will chip in. And the big question mark is also about the U.S. role in the reconstruction of Gaza, given the fact that USAID is not any longer as it used to be, and it was quite a powerful instrument in the Middle East. And then you have also countries like China, or major powers like China, that are very much focused on development. So what's your view on that? Who is going to pay for the reconstruction of Gaza?
Well, these are all very legitimate questions that, again, when I mentioned the ambiguity in the 20-point plan is the implementation aspects of it and who's going to do what. So you're absolutely right. These are major questions that need to be addressed. I think the Arab Gulf states have already made public commitments, oral commitments, that they would participate in a serious manner in the financing of reconstruction in Gaza. But again, that presumes also that there will be a stabilization force, some sort of security force that will assure public security in Gaza so that development and construction can take place. So that commitment for financing is also dependent on having a security force that will provide the security for foreign direct investments, for construction projects, etc. All that needs to be elaborated. All that needs to be put in place. Now, there are serious ongoing talks as we speak to do exactly that. But again, it's going to take a strong commitment from as you mentioned, the Europeans. Also, I think one would welcome uh, the participation of all countries in the rehabilitation of Gaza Strip, including those countries in Asia that can contribute it. But that all has to be worked out.
Let me ask you another question in relation to the balance of power forces in the Middle East. What are the main shifts that brought us to this ceasefire or peace plan according to your viewpoints?
Well, if we go back to October 7th, 2023, what Hamas has achieved by that horrific attack on the Israelis that killed over 1,200 Israelis uh, is that the Palestinian issue has been brought back front and center, not only on the regional agenda, but on the international agenda. You will remember that with the elaboration of the Abraham Accords and uh, uh, the stagnation of the situation between Israel and Palestine, that the Palestinian issue was being considered to be a marginal issue. What Hamas has achieved in a very brutal way on October 7th is to bring that Palestinian issue and the issue of self-determination of Palestinians front and center all over the world, as you can see by the demonstrations throughout the world on the Palestinian issue. Uh, so the point here is that uh, any real permanent solution to the conflict that we've seen in Gaza is going to ultimately depend on a permanent settlement of the Israeli Palestinian issue.
Mm.
And in my view, on the principle of land for peace, not just on economic peace, peace for peace, as the Abraham Accords were based on. Uh, it's really getting, if we're talking about peace, what we've achieved so far is a ceasefire and all the various issues we've just discussed. But if we're really talking about a permanent solution, it has to be where the Israelis recognize the self-determination of the Palestinian people to have a state of their own, and the Palestinians fully accept the Israeli state in which they can live next door to one another in peace and security. That's the big game. That is, if you will, the peace prize at the end of the road. We're nowhere near that now. We're nowhere near that now. The Israeli government under Benjamin Netanyahu has stated in recent months there will be no Palestinian state, that he's against the Palestinian state. And Israeli settlers have taken advantage of the situation in Gaza to increase their settlements in the West Bank. And so the situation remains quite precarious on that front. But if this ceasefire leads to the stabilization of Gaza, the reconstruction of Gaza, the Palestinians coming in and governing Gaza, in my view, what is going to be necessary is new leadership both in Israel and in Palestine. We simply need new elections in Israel for a government to come to power in Israel, whoever the prime minister may be, but who's ready to negotiate all these issues, especially a final settlement with the Palestinians. What we need on the Palestinian side, and we have to recognize that the Palestinian Authority has become systemically corrupt over the years and is weak after all these years of occupation. That we need new leadership and we need new elections in Palestine. And hopefully, one never knows in elections, people and parties will come to power that are willing to begin to negotiate a final settlement. That is the big hope in the long run.
And I have to thank you a lot about offering this big perspective about the region. And since we are talking about the balance of powers and that is shifting in the Middle East, how would you assess the role of Saudi Arabia and the whole normalization process that started with Abraham Accords, which, on the other hand, as you rightly pointed out, marginalized the issue of Palestinians or their right to self-determination. And on the other hand, we have also Iran and Syria. And that would be also my last question for our podcast.
Well, to address your questions, there has been the Gaza war of October 7th has led to a geopolitical shift in the political landscape in the Middle East, as you've alluded to. And I compare it to what happened after the Yom Kippur War in 1973, when Israel was surprised once again, at that time by the attack by Egypt and Syria on Israel. But you remember, a few years after 1973, the American president, Jimmy Carter, brokered the Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. And I think we're in a similar situation. The historical context is entirely different. But I think we're in a similar situation where the balance of powers have shifted in the Middle East. Iran's position has been diminished. Its access of resistance. Hezbollah's been decapitated. Hamas has been seriously reduced in its power. Bashar al-Assad is no longer the ruler of Syria, etc. So there's been a shift in the political landscape, and this is going to be, in my mind, a opportunity for reshuffling the deck in the Middle East, and with what we talked about in the reconstruction of Gaza and next steps on Israeli-Palestinian peace, there may be a real opportunity here. But the weak point in all of this is, do we have on all sides the political leaders, the political capital, the political will to do the hard work of statecraft in really bringing a structural peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and bringing peace and stability to the Middle East? The opportunity is there, but there are a lot of points that can be obstacles to that goal.
Ambassador Djerejian, it was a pleasure and honor to have you on.
Thank you. Good to be with you.